about. Real nerds think the UFOs are aliens. All right, Paul? That's the line. You can't abandon ship now.
Paul doesn't listen to you.
I know.
This episode is made possible by our partner, Dirty B.
Dirty B!
From fabulous Enterprise,
There
Nevada.
it is. Yeah, let's do that.
This is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. You can submit your questions anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. And now broadcasting from the churn, that guy's Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
Well, we had a very delightful Patreon addition to this one. This is worth a listen. If you've ever wondered, how could I destroy a relationship with $100 in one night in Las Vegas? Patreon.com/therapy. These three geniuses engineered the worst night available in Las Vegas.
It wouldn't be
for
that
$100.
It wouldn't be that hard to do.
Yeah,
but
there's
I think
easier ways to do it.
I think we nailed it.
Yeah,
I think
we masterminded a
we
full
were the most
and complete
creative
date.
Yes.
We got everything right. Okay,
Right.
Transportation was considered, where you're eating, what your show is, what your after show.
'Cause, I mean, the really easy way
Yeah.
to just end a relationship
Crash a
in
car.
Las Vegas is
Ended
just
it.
look directly at your significant other. Don't say
Yes.
a word. Look deeply into their eyes.
Yes.
Punch them right in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And then as they are just standing there bewildered,
Viva
then
Las
you punch
Vegas.
them in the face, you take a $100 bill out of your pocket, you crumple it up, and just throw it right in their face, bounce it off their nose,
That's
and walk
faster.
away.
That's faster. If you want to hear the extended version of that idea, manifested over a lot of Las Vegas intricate knowledge, patreon.com/therapy. You can also hear about Nick Tangeman's valiant struggle with his golf problem.
Yeah,
And
but
it's only getting worse.
But I do want you to listen to the Patreon. So only about 5 minutes of it is golf.
Okay, yeah,
Let's throw that
We
out
should
there
probably
because
let
I don't want to turn
We
people
don't want
off.
to discourage
Yeah.
anybody. But I think we covered a lot of good stuff in this one.
Most of the rest is Bill Murray and a robot gopher.
That's
Yeah.
all it really is.
We did
So,
some good work.
I liked it.
Yeah.
So great show ahead. We got some great questions coming into this one. But before I move forward, don't forget at patreon.com/therapy. So far, and for a while now, we have been releasing new content every Monday. And as you hear this week's episode, if you are not a patron, jump in there because there is a really great skill share on grounding techniques. I listened to every word of it.
You did.
Oh, man, I got to tell you, I needed it. I really did. When you finish that talk, your last strategy is the one that really works for me. And one of the things you said in there is, you give a buffet of different grounding techniques, which I think is always the right way to present it because a lot of people get discouraged. They hear like box breathing and they're like, oh, breathing, that doesn't work for me. And they think that's all grounding techniques are. But there's physical ones, there's mental ones, there's simulating ones.
I went through and I picked my favorites.
Okay.
It was a Nick's greatest hits of grounding techniques.
Well, I thought you fairly showed like different types, and there was lots of different things represented. The two that make the biggest difference for me, category distraction. So like looking around the room, alphabetizing and saying, okay, start with A. That one was a good one. But also the calm, safe place. That really worked. And hearing you recount, I think that was the Caribbean? Is that
Yeah.
That I was literally, as I was listening to that, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that right now because I kind of need to. And so I actually paused it right then, and I took your cue, and I immediately, so my calm, safe place was a beach in California, and I just did every single piece that you talked about. I went through all the visuals one by one, and as I was remembering things that I would see, the color of the roof on the hotel and the color of the umbrellas on the sand, and I was just going item through item. I just felt this warmth and just calm come right back over me. And then I went through the senses.
He had peed himself.
I had peed myself. I was in the shower, so I only listened to you in the shower exclusively. I pause when I'm getting out of the shower and save it for the next shower. But it was very, very good. So patreon.com/therapy, a great skill share up there on, what are those called again? Grounding. I was going to call them groundbreaking techniques, but
I mean, they are
groundbreaking grounding techniques.
There it is.
There you
Yeah,
go.
those are up there. We've got some great pieces.
You like
on...
my music?
I did. That has been all the rage. There's been a lot of chatter on the Discord about your musical selections. So.
I found a song I really like. So
I liked it.
Just gonna stick with it.
Yeah.
Winds of Change.
Yeah.
Scorpions.
Yeah.
That's
what it is.
It's very solid.
Figured.
Great content up there. Come check it out.
Pretty Young
Patreon.com.
Thing by Michael Jackson.
That's what it is. Our first question is about living with somebody who has borderline personality disorder. Greetings, Pod Therapy gentlemen. I've been so grateful since discovering this podcast around episode 15. Wow, damn.
Wow.
Way to hang in there.
Get a new podcast.
Yeah, it's time.
Yeah.
I genuinely look forward to the new episode every week, and am sad when I have to wait 7 more days for the new one.
Did it say genuinely or generally?
I want to say...
I generally look forward to the new episodes.
But then I listen to the back catalog and get very happy with the Patreon Witty Banter Hour, which is my favorite. I don't know that I ever call it witty, but banter. Banter's correct. Also, how to ruin relationships. This one is really good one. But to my question with a bit of background, my children's father and I have been in each other's life for 13 years and have 2 children together, ages 6 and 8. I am struggling with our relationship, what I want it to be and what I know it should be. He was recently diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which helped clarify the trauma that I've endured. He's always been prone to anger and aggression with the drop of a pin. He tends to shift blame, or can have delusional recollections, and would make me second-guess reality, since he genuinely believes his delusions. He convinces me and everyone else that I'm crazy, and my reality is not what is actually happening. Every day he would tell me that I was lying and that our relationship was a joke, and I just used him. He will turn to self-harm by punching walls or hitting his head against walls to get what he wants. He will try to manipulate situations, because everyone must bend to his will, or he will become threatening if you refuse his demands or say, I'm going to commit suicide because nobody would care. I can't have any conversations with him because it always turns into putting me down by reminding me of any mistakes I've made in the past that he uses to discredit my opinion and put my self-esteem to the ground. Due to living with this, I am not able to identify feelings and have trouble recalling the past or believing my memories of events. I have difficulty conversing with others, wanting to leave the house and make friends, or even who I am. The thing that made me finally leave was when he took the wheel while I was driving and made me spin out and almost hit a semi-truck with our kids in the car because I wasn't engaging with him when he was verbally attacking me. But because I refused to participate, since I thought that would calm him down, he felt I was being disrespectful. So that was it, and I left that night when he went to sleep. We have not lived together for almost 2 years, but I still struggle deeply with our relationship. I know it is a mental disorder, and his actions are not all his fault. And when he's not having episodes, our relationship is good, and we do great at co-parenting. I'm afraid to take him to court because he had warped my mind enough throughout our many years together to make me believe that he would harm me, that he would somehow get full custody of our kids, or he would just take the kids and run away. So I live with the verbal abuse and threats and will do what I can to make him happy, to make life easier and protect the kids. If I refuse to do what he wants, the first threat always is that he is coming to steal the kids. I'm afraid and legally can't do anything about it currently, but what is messed up is I still have hope to reunite our family because it's not all bad, and I know it's a mental disorder, so his actions are not all his fault. As you can see in my writing, I'm torn and confused about what to do. I'm in counseling, but she doesn't have the experience to inform me with this. So I guess what I want to know is, 1, is it possible for someone with BPD to get better? And what does treatment entail? Does untreated BPD get worse with age? What can I do as a family member with a BPD person to make it as easy as possible on me to not trigger abuse? How can I explain to the kids about BPD and mental disorders? I want them to understand Daddy's actions and educate them about the symptoms in a way a 6 and 8-year-old boy can understand, and yet that the kids did nothing wrong and that Daddy has an owie in his head. Again, I appreciate you guys and thank you for all you do with love. Anonymous. I'm going to keep that one anonymous.
Thank you, Anonymous.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I guess
Set of questions.
yeah. So the very first thing, I want to kind of address the diagnosis
Yeah.
and the person's choices.
Mm.
Okay. Because yes, I do get what you're saying in that we have to understand that there is a mental health diagnosis that we're dealing with here. However, I don't want to send the message that that means that the person's not responsible for
Ah.
the actions that they take.
Yeah.
This is why I
Right.
like Nick Tangeman right here.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
God.
all I think about
That-
whenever I hear that. Is I go, oh, I
that
want
is
them to
the-
be responsible.
God, that is the nicest thing, Jacob. Can we just
Let's
sit
end
in
it.
this
It's a
for a
new-
let's
moment?
just hold
I just
it
want
there.
to sit here.
Let me tell you something about getting complimented by Jacob.
Oh, it's
It's
so
a
warm.
Trojan fucking horse.
It just feels so.
All right, yeah. Let me just tell you, season 6 has taught me a thing or two, man. Let me tell you, you don't believe it. All right, don't let it in. That's how he gets you. Okay, that's how he gets you.
I'm
You open
sit-
those gates of
All
Troy.
I'm doing, I'm just ignoring all of this. I'm ignoring this negativity. You see this,
Yeah.
Anonymous?
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
gonna ignore Jim's
Taking the high
negativity.
road.
And
Taking the high road.
all I'm doing is sitting over here going like, oh, God damn it, I hope they say that the person is responsible.
yeah.
Because this always this makes me crazy.
Yeah. So
Because people use the same excuse with alcohol and drugs and everything else, and it's like, well,
and it's always people who don't with the alcohol and drugs. It's always people who are like, say stuff like, it's not a disease, it's not a disorder, that's bullshit, you're responsible. Yeah, you are. Saying it's a disease or saying it's a disorder is accurate, but it doesn't negate
it doesn't
personal
alleviate the
responsibility.
responsibility.
Yeah, you still have choices. And so that's the thing, because I don't want you to get back into a relationship like this and think that, okay, well, I have to excuse the behavior. You don't. You absolutely don't. I mean, your safety is number one, safety of yourself and your children.
Yeah.
So that has to be number one. The diagnosis does not excuse the behavior.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Borderline personality.
Oh,
wow,
thank you,
look
thank
at
you.
this. Standing O.
Oh,
Wow.
he's winning me over.
The first standing ovation in the history of the show. Just relish it, buddy, because it'll all be taken from you. Man, I tell you what, Anonymous, this is a tough one. First off, you did the right thing.
Yes.
2 years ago, stepping away and saying, yeah, I got to draw a line around safety. No matter what the conditions are, whether it's this or addiction or any number of other things that may cause somebody to behave in an outward way at other people, you have rights in all of this. And especially as a parent, you made the right decision to protect the safety of the kids and yourself and to create some space there. And obviously that hasn't been sufficient because this is still a very threatening situation and there's a lot here. I want to take a second to talk a little bit about borderline personality disorder. So, and we've touched on this in the past, but every time this kind of stuff comes up, we got to take a moment just to reflect on it. Because when you hear about anxiety or depression, you don't need us to define it very much. But for a lot of you, you're hearing this and going, what the hell is that? So we have these classifications in the mental health textbook we call the DSM-5-TR. And there's a chapter in there where we identify what we call personality disorders. That's always been a very tricky thing to talk about. Because when you talk about somebody just having a broken personality, you don't exactly know what that means. And I guess it's a cluster of symptoms. There's so many symptoms that go along with it that it isn't as clear as like this person has a fear problem, right? Like anxiety, or this person has a sadness problem, like depression. It's got this pantheon of things. And so these qualities, these characteristics all tend to erupt out of different areas. And so we just kind of group them. And we even have clusters. So we have clusters of personality disorders where we kind of group them into similar types of personality disorders, or maybe not similar, but adjacent, I guess, in the way we're going to describe them. And then we also break them down in individual things. So you've probably heard in the past of narcissistic personality disorder. That's one. Antisocial personality disorder, or what a lot of people colloquially refer to as a sociopath. That's another one. Obsessive and compulsive personality disorder is actually one too. A lot of people don't know that. And that's because we needed to have a way to cast a broader net when it's not just OCD. And so there's all these different ones. Now, borderline personality disorder really tends to focus on the way relationships work. So here's some of the criteria that we tend to see in this. And I'm just reading right from the web on this. But chronic feelings of emptiness is a big one. Emotional instability, Big reactions, intense episodic sadness, irritability, anxiety, might last a few hours. It's just very intense. Frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. Now, this is one that I see a lot in BPD. And we think, and BPD is tricky because, yes, it can be something that just organically arises, but we also seem to see it arrive in people who've also experienced relational trauma or just general trauma in life. That tends to be part of its genesis. Identity disturbances with marked or persistently unstable self-image or sense of self. So that could be massive insecurity. Again, going back to things that Anonymous is saying, like fear of abandonment, impulsive behavior in at least 2 areas that are potentially self-damaging. So like spending money, sexuality, substance abuse, reckless driving, binge eating, inappropriate, intense anger, and difficulty controlling their anger, getting into physical fights, frequent displays of temper, patterns of unstable and intense interpersonal relationships, usually characterized by these extremes. They love bomb you, they idealize you, you are God to them, and then they devalue you, what we call splitting, put you down, run away. They think you're garbage, get away from them. Sometimes we see suicidal behavior, gestures, or threats, and self-harming behavior. And then lastly on this list, transient stress-related paranoid ideation or severe dissociative symptoms. So you can see why it becomes necessary to have a broad net to describe this pattern, because any one of these could sound like another thing. But it is a very difficult thing to deal with. And for some people, it's not as severe. They just have a tendency to, self-sabotage relationships. They fall in love quick and hard, and then they push you away really fast.
The phrase I always think of when I think of borderline personality disorder is, I hate you, don't leave me.
Yeah, I love you, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah,
exactly. This clinging and grasping with very big intensity, which can be very charming, and this is why they tend to end up in these big relationships. Because when somebody comes up to you and they're just like madly in love with you and they idealize you, you think you've hit the jackpot, but then the coin flips and you always blame yourself and you think, oh man, what have I done? You thought I was a god. I was the best thing since sliced bread. Now you can't wait to get rid of me. And, they tend to put you down and say, you caused this, you made me feel bad about myself. You didn't compliment me. You looked at that other person. There's something wrong here. Again, deep insecurity can be part of this too. So it's a very, very difficult pattern when somebody's going through this. And what you hear in Anonymous's story is, I think, a very severe case that also tells us how dangerous it can be. So let's zoom in on some of these questions, and I'm trying to pull back
so
up.
The first one, is it possible for someone with borderline to get better? What does the treatment entail? And does untreated borderline get worse with age? Well, it doesn't get better, like on its own. As far as treatment, there is, dialectical behavioral therapy is the most common
DBT,
treatment for that. However, the thing with borderline personality disorder is individuals with that diagnosis typically aren't in treatment.
Yeah.
Like they're not, because there's usually a lot of times they don't recognize the problem, the symptoms of it. So it's not like depression or anxiety where someone's like, wow, this is crippling. It's really affecting my life. I need
want help. Yeah, anxiety
Yeah.
people are banging down the door of the therapist's office. Please fix me. I'm suffering.
Borderline personality disorder, you don't get that. They often don't see themselves as really being the problem.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate if you're the person in a relationship with that individual.
Right.
So it seems like for the most part, those individuals, if they are in treatment, it's usually at the behest or threat of somebody else saying you need help, and then therefore they go into treatment.
Dialectical behavioral therapy is a derivative of cognitive behavioral therapy that was designed specifically for borderline personality disorder and has a real great success with it. It tends to work best in group settings because the members can see attitudes and beliefs in others that they've held themselves, but it helps them understand how foolish it is or how inaccurate it is when they see it through the eyes of another person. But it focuses on this idea of the dialectic, which is to compare opposites. Comes from Hegelian dialectical methods in philosophy. So what they are doing is teaching them to observe the extremes and then find the mean. And it's a really powerful method if people are willing to get the help. So yes, it is possible for somebody with BPD to get better. Treatment usually is going to look like a DBT program, and there are many therapists that offer it. And I want to say in a lot of cities now, you're going to find DBT groups being offered. Luckily for you in this case, Ryder, DBT is not a rare or seldom used technique. It is increasingly common. I got to tell you, right now I'm interviewing associate therapists, and one of the first questions I ask in the interview is like, what methods have you practiced? Like, what do you like to use? And it apparently it's the new hotness, because like 5 for 5 are like, I love DBT. And I'm like, man, that's really cool. This is like really, really common. So it's great to hear that it's coming through. Does untreated BPD get worse with age? I mean, if we had a DSM open, we could look up prognosis and course, right? And we could see where that goes. My guess is that it does and it doesn't. I do think that most people over time are going to have modifying experiences that are usually going to rein in some of the more extreme stuff. But also it depends on how long this behavior is allowed to persist, because it gets enabled. Like, this person doesn't do this, doesn't grab a car when he doesn't like do this when they're in a taxi or an Uber, something to get them arrested, right? They do it to their spouse, who isn't going to do anything about it. So a lot of these behaviors go unchecked or unmodified for a really long time until we do something about it. And Anonymous, you did whenever you created space and created safety and parted. And so I do think that in theory should cause some kind of moderation. I don't know of any correlation over age, though. Nothing off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't either.
But if you look up BPD course, you'll probably see some language that talks about any age-related data that we have. What can I do as a family member with a BPD person to make it easy as possible on me to not trigger abuse?
Okay. Here, one thing I want to mention just right off the bat is I kind of want to challenge the thought here of what can I do to not trigger the abuse? Because the thing that kind of worries me about the way that you phrase that is you're taking a lot of ownership and accountability for somebody else's behavior. And just the way it's phrased kind of makes it sound like, you know, I need to change what I am doing to not set this person off. And I get where that's coming from. So you're not wrong in doing it. You're doing it because you've been taught that for my own personal safety, I need to walk on eggshells around this person. So it makes perfect sense why you're doing it. However, you already made the best decision you could, which is you got out of that situation.
Yeah.
And I think what you do now, the best thing you can do is you create and enforce healthy boundaries dealing with all around the safety of yourself and your children.
Yeah.
And you have to enforce those so that if something does trigger this individual, you're still safe.
Yeah.
You don't want to put yourself in a situation where your safety is dependent on this person being their best self.
Right.
You want to create a situation in which if things go wrong, you're still okay.
Right.
So that's how I would frame all of your future boundaries that you set.
Yeah.
Yeah. BPD hates boundaries.
Yeah.
Hates boundaries.
Let me rephrase Anonymous's question to possibly a helpful way for them and for us. Is there something that they can do to directly improve their lives when it comes to dealing with this spouse?
So I think number one, I'm going to go back to my favorite saying that I learned in graduate school, and I think always seems to apply. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. Now, that doesn't mean that people can't change, because if I believe that, I wouldn't be doing the job that I'm doing. People can change, but it's a lot of work. So if you're thinking about reestablish any kind of relationship, and you still have a relationship, you talked about co-parenting.
Right.
And so one of the things that you mentioned is you said we co-parent very well. That's awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I think what we need to do in this situation is you kind of change what a healthy relationship with this person means. A healthy relationship with this person right now just means you co-parent very well.
Right.
That's it.
It's the best relationship available.
Yes. Then that, and you take that, and then we're just going to sit here with this until you have a reason to go to a different level with that.
Right.
and you have to have, again, safety has to be number one. So if you're talking about reestablishing a closer relationship, maybe moving back in, let's just say, with this person, you have to have a safety plan in place, and you have to have all of these boundaries. So, I mean, things that you can do right now, I think you just, I don't know. I keep going back to kind of these boundaries and kind of keeping a safe distance. Like, and again, any decision that you make with this person, I think has to go through this filter of, if the worst happens, how can I still guarantee that we're safe?
Right.
And if you can't guarantee that, then I'm not going to take that step.
Right.
I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
There has to be a line there to protect the safety, and that's going to have to be.
And the expectation isn't we're going to go back to the way it was when we first got together.
Right.
The expectation is more of a temperate expectation.
Yes.
And it is understanding this is the type of relationship that we can have as things sit right now.
Yes.
So let's work on that.
It's the best.
This is what we've got right now.
Yep.
So let's work on this. We are co-parents.
Take what
let's work on being co-parents together.
Yes.
And then if other things develop from that, then we will work on those as they come up.
So about the kids, because you asked, how do I tell them that like daddy has an owie in his head? So if you haven't already, one resource I do want you to look up, Anonymous, is NAMI. And we've talked about NAMI a ton on the show. We donate to them every year. But NAMI, one of the things I like about them is it's fueled by folks living with mental health issues or those that love them. And there's a friends and family group in your city that might be very comforting with a situation like this. It's profound to be in a room with other people, to share your truth and what you've experienced and have people relate to that. And there really could be community there. And even with kids, I mean, I've met people who had a mentally ill member of their family, and they did grow up a little bit going to NAMI and go into support groups. And sometimes it was really healthy for them just to find a safe place to talk about stuff. And sometimes there's even other kids, and like that could actually be really healthy. Another option too, you mentioned that you have a counselor. That counselor doesn't have a ton of information about BPD. The two things in modern psychotherapy, and hopefully this continues to change because as I'm aging, I am less and less connected to what's contemporary in the field. But at least in my day, the two things that everybody's terrified to treat, everybody's scared to treat BPD and addictions. Those seem to be the two things that most therapists freak out about and they don't want to do. They're very hard to treat. In most states, addictions requires its own separate license and training because it's so hard to treat. BPD, on the other hand, does not. But it's hard to get good experience in it because BPD folks don't often stick around in treatment. And so it's really, really difficult. And no matter how good you are, and I've had tons of patients that have BPD, and one of the things I have to work on with BPD people once I identify it is keeping the relationship strong enough between me and them that they will keep coming back.
Yeah.
Because they'll tell me, I can't tell you how many times this has happened. I always chuckle myself when it does, inwardly. But I'll have a BPD patient and they'll be like, one day is, Jim, you are God's gift to therapy. Just this kindnesses, effusions. Like, you have saved my life. You're just a really great guy. Oh, thank you so much.
You were like Jesus and Kanye put together.
Yeah, Fergie and Jesus.
I believe you're just referring to Kanye.
It's just Kanye. Just Yeezy. Jesus. So, yeah, and then...
By the way, I'm not a Kanye fan. Let me clarify.
Yeah, except for that Kanye yarmulke you're wearing.
I don't.
So then you fast forward, and then one day they'll just be like, I just really don't think you know what you're doing here. And like I have to brace for that and remember the diagnosis and remember what's going on and, not fight it, right? And just continue to work through it. It takes a lot of real difficult experience and skill to help. However, your kiddos and you can benefit from creating a space where maybe even the kiddos come to a family session. That could be with your primary counselor, or maybe you could get a recommendation to another counselor. But I would like that, even at this age, teaching them to normalize. It's okay to talk about what goes on. We don't have to keep things secret. And that's what happens. When you have a family member like this and you're a kid, you're embarrassed, you're horrified, and it normalizes some of the scary things that happen such that you don't even think to bring it up later. You just kind of, oh, that was weird. Yeah, that time dad almost killed us all. Haha. Anyway, and then they just pivot. So one of the kindest things you can do for kiddos that are going through this kind of stuff is just normalize talking about it without shame, without guilt, without judgment, whether that's with you or in a family session or at NAMI, creating a space for them to talk through it. As they age, they will become cognitively capable of understanding this big picture of mental illness. Presently, I don't know that I would sit them down and start trying to explain psychology. At this age, 6 and 8, I have kids that age. I don't know that now's the time. I think I would probably keep it very general and just say, Daddy, well, I mean, you could say words like Daddy's unwell or sick or, I guess that could help.
What about going to the therapist without Dad?
Yeah.
Just so the dad can so that the therapist can kind of start having the conversation with the kiddos.
Yeah.
Hey, here are some things that might be going on with Dad.
That's
and then,
what I meant by family therapy. I didn't think Dad would be there.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Great.
But that's where I'd want that to happen.
Yeah. Okay.
And maybe a therapist might help the kids language that. And what will probably happen is you won't refer to it as a thing. You won't refer to a meta-narrative like sickness. Instead, what is most likely to happen is you're going to refer to the characteristics. Oh, Daddy's in one of his angry moods. Daddy's in one of his scared moods. Daddy has big feelings. Oh, yeah, I know Daddy can have really big feelings. Yeah. And if Daddy ever makes you feel uncomfortable or you feel unhappy around Daddy, it's okay to tell Mommy. It's okay to talk about it. If Daddy tells you not to tell me things, you've got to create a way for the kids mostly to speak and be heard. That's the most important thing. But as far as explaining it to them, I think, Anonymous, that comes in time. And in the beginning, you're going to have more luck describing the quality rather than the explanation for the quality.
There's also a website, borderlinepersonalitydisorder.org. And if you go scroll down to the bottom, there's like a family education section there. It's not meant for kids, but there's some videos there that may be helpful for you as a family member. And I'd check that out as well.
Yeah. Anonymous, this is a great question. It's a very powerful scenario you're facing. I am so glad to hear that you are in counseling and that you're sticking to it even when the counselor doesn't necessarily have expertise on BPD. Their job is to have expertise on you and to just be there for you and get to know you. But if you haven't already, I would ask the counselor to help you write a safety plan just to kind of spell out, here's kind of what we would do, because if we have had some violence, I mean, that car scenario really needs to be taken seriously. I mean, it happened years ago.
That's enough.
You responded to it exactly correctly. You could have responded to it at a much higher level. That could have put that dude in jail for child endangerment at a minimum or attempted homicide.
And I bet you had friends at the time who
Didn't
said
like
that.
Yeah, who said
let's call the cops.
Yeah, or family. So I just want to make sure you keep a safety plan in tow. If you ever believe that the children could be abducted or taken, I really want you to sit down and talk to your counselor about safety planning for that too. There's technology that can help with that. You should at a minimum get the children fingerprinted at your local police station and make sure that they are, in the local network as far as for extra safety planning. Let's just do some due diligence, please. But your counselor should be able to help you brainstorm good ideas for that, okay?
You can take them to the vet and get them chipped.
You can get them chipped. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that.
People just brush right by
and
that.
You got to get them those vaccines. Parvo's no joke.
Parvo, kennel cough?
Kennel cough.
Oh,
Yeah, it's not
You don't
good.
want them getting that.
Thank you for writing in, Anonymous, and please let us know how that turns out. We're going to take a quick
Actually,
break.
now that I'm thinking about it, I'm making a joke, clearly, about the chipping thing, but now that I'm thinking about it, like getting them things like air tags and sewing them into their backpacks.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because presumably the dad would say, get your backpack, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that. I mean, there's a lot of technology out there that
if they
can
have
help
a
with that.
teddy bear, that's like their special teddy bear.
So an air tag or one of those things into it.
And we don't want to nudge you into paranoia, but there is some diligence that I think you can do. And I think if you just did some quick searches online, especially if you're fearful of like child abduction or things like that, there's some basics.
And of course, if you feel like danger is imminent, 911.
911. Don't mess around.
Because worst case scenario, if you call 911 in that instance, worst case scenario is you might feel as though you've wasted some police officers' time.
Yeah, and
Big deal.
I appreciate that.
It's not nothing. I'm not saying that's not. I'm not saying that's nothing. But
is pretty
compared,
volatile. And,
yes,
yeah. and
compared
Anonymous
to
said they're
risking
scared of
the children's safety and everything,
Worth it.
you've wasted some police officers' time for an evening or whatever it is. That's okay. If you feel that danger is actually imminent,
that. Yeah,
911.
never hesitate. But we're rooting for you, my friend.
Absolutely.
And please keep us in the loop. We always like to know how things are progressing.
And do let us know what the vet says.
No, most importantly, that's
Yeah.
what I meant. Yeah, I meant please update us on the kennel cough.
Right.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about therapy reluctance. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
Today's episode is brought to you by Jake Schneider, Judy Schneider, Leon Casab, Carolyn Alberts, Sammy Scoop, Sarah Smith, Mike Helm, Darren Cunningham, Matt and Lisa Tangeman, and Dr. Hot Dog Scoop. If you'd like to sponsor the show, become a therapy producer at patreon.com/therapy. Our trivia this week.
Loser has to take their significant other on that date.
Oh,
Yes.
it's a great way to end a marriage.
Yes.
Jeez.
Yes. Oh, I'm
You don't
now-
even need to sign
now
divorce
I'm-
papers.
no.
Oh,
That's
SJ
it.
wouldn't last 20 minutes.
Oh, there's no
She'd
way.
be like, no, I'm leaving.
She's not getting on the cat bus.
No.
No. She's like, where do you want to start? Bonneville? No.
Yeah, but-
I'm out.
I think SJ might last the longest now that I'm thinking about it. And I'd give her 20 minutes tops.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I think, you know what? We should
All right,
all,
we're gonna do
we
it.
should we should all
How
do
drunk
this.
would the three of
No,
us
no, no.
need to be to go do this?
No. We should
On
all do
Saturday
this.
night, we should live tweet the whole thing.
We should all do this.
Yeah.
And let's take a bet to see which one of our significant others would last
I
the
just think we
longest.
should all three of us do this and just play chicken. And
And then we can go in together on the divorce attorney as
Gets
well.
the $100. Yeah. This is a great idea.
I'm not married.
That's true.
Then
That's true.
Then we get your half. Yeah, we get your third. To
Yeah, you
offset
still have
our
to go in
costs.
on our divorce attorneys.
Yeah.
All right. Theme 1960s.
All right.
Ooh,
True.
My favorite decade.
What was the average median income
Oh boy.
of an American family
Oh jeez.
in the 1960s?
Household income.
Household
All right.
income.
Yeah.
Are we talking about 63 or 67?
Shut up. 68.
1960.
Everything happened in
68 is the only one I don't know.
In 1960.
Oh, in 1960.
In 1960.
Okay.
Wait, the first year of the 60s?
That is the first year
1960.
of the 60s. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right.
All right. 21,300, 18,900, 11,200, 5,600.
Holy cow.
I mean,
Wow.
man, household income, 1960.
Jeez.
What was C?
C was 11,200.
I want that one.
Okay.
I'll take the 18,000.
Which one is that? B?
B, 18,900. You are both wrong.
Is it? It's D, isn't it?
It is.
No.
5,600.
No.
I was between D and C.
No. That is
always
the down
between the
payment
D.
on a cheap car. That
Yeah.
is unfucking believable.
Right now, that gets you a PS5.
Yes. Yeah. Not
if
a
you don't have
controller,
other
though.
expenses,
No
Not a controller.
controller.
if you don't have
No
other
games.
expenses for the year,
No
then that gets you a
game.
PS5.
Wow. That's my heating
Yeah.
bill, man. Jeez. Oh my gosh.
All right.
$5,000. And that'd probably buy you 2 houses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In 1960, the average cost of a new car was $2,600.
Oh, half a year's wages?
Yeah. Well, while today it's about 30,000.
Oh, there
it's
you
average.
go. Yeah, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, average household income is probably around 60 grand.
Yeah,
I would
that's
guess
so
based on that.
interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I guess it probably isn't because I believe that's what they call inflation.
Ah. All right. Good question there. So zeros all around. Therapy reluctance. Hi, Jacob and friends.
Howdy. 60,900 is
Dang.
median household income in the U.S. right now.
Hi,
Yeah,
Jacob
about
and
half.
friends. I've been going to therapy for years, and I find it to be very helpful
Awesome.
just to deal with the daily stresses of being an adult, even though I don't have any past trauma or mental health issues that I'm working through. I think that everyone should find a therapist, even just to have someone on retainer when hard life stuff comes up. I've been encouraging my partner to find a therapist for a few months, as he was in therapy for a year or so, but when his therapist left the area, he did not find another therapist and has stated that he doesn't want to go to therapy anymore. Anyway, because he doesn't feel like he was getting anything out of it. I still feel like I still feel like he needs to find another therapist to help him deal with his stress in a healthy way. And he says he will, but only because I want him to, not because he wants to. So my question is this: how do you, as a therapist, respond to a client who's in therapy, even if they think they don't need it or they don't want to be there? Thanks, Anonymous. Pronouns are she and her. I'll tell you right now, Anonymous, you're not going to like our answer. I'm going to get a water.
Well, I don't know. That might not be true. I don't think so. Well, I can relate to this because I have spent the last 18 years doing exactly this. I mean, everybody who comes in for substance use disorder treatment.
You don't have a lot of voluntary.
Yeah, not many people are there by choice. Everybody is there because of an external force, right? So this is, from my perspective, my experience, this is nothing new. It doesn't bother me the slightest bit.
It occurs to me this is like therapy is like the new army. Yeah. When you'd get in trouble and you'd go to court and the judge would be like, all right, you can do 2 years in prison or you can join the army.
Yeah.
I was like, you can do 2 years in prison or you can go see Nick Tangeman.
This is your out.
That is exactly what drug court is.
Yeah.
That is exactly.
That's what we have.
I'm not even really making a joke.
Jail.
I'm just pointing something out that I'm just realizing.
Yeah, it's just facts. That's so true.
Yeah. And here's the amazing thing. It doesn't matter. At least for substance use, addictions treatment, maybe a little bit different for mental health, but people always think that you have to go there wanting it for it to be meaningful. And
no, you're thinking
actually,
hypnosis.
Yeah, the research does not support that. Actually, there is quite a bit of support for externally motivated people who come into treatment. Now, the big key for any therapist, and Jim will probably agree from the mental health perspective on this, is that the key for any therapist is to take that external motivation and use that to try to find internal motivation for that person.
Yeah.
So a lot of what we do is saying, I used to do this all the time with my clients, is they would come in and they say, yeah, I'm only here because my probation officer wants to be here.
Right.
And so we have, so we're going to create a treatment plan. You tell me the things that your PO wants to see.
There you go.
Hey.
And then so then we put that on the treatment plan.
Yep.
And then the very next thing I do is I say, okay, that's for your PO.
Yeah.
You're here anyway.
Right.
It's on the government's dime.
Mm-hmm.
You have access to a counselor.
Yeah.
What is it that you want?
Right.
Is there anything you want to get out of this that's just between you and me?
While we're in there tinkering.
Yeah. So I'll do the things that your PO wants me to do, and I'll write the letter. And as long as you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, we'll all get on the same page. We'll do all that. But if we are here for an hour once a week and we get his stuff done in the first 30 minutes, what do you want the last 30 minutes to be?
Right. And
then that's usually when they come up with things. And it's amazing because a lot of times they will have an answer for that. And they'll be like, you know what? I'm really stressed at work. I wish I had a better way of dealing with that.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Then let's do that.
We'll put that on the list.
Yep. And even if that's just between you and me, that's just something that we're going to talk about.
Every once in a while they say, I just want to get really good at using drugs. I feel like I've been a hobbyist. I'm ready to go pro.
Yeah.
It'd be great if you could help me.
All right, let's work on that.
I feel like I could take this to the next level.
Yeah. I just want to stop getting caught.
We're going to start by talking about nature's pocket.
That's
Nature's pocket.
the old prison wallet.
You're going to hide them.
Oh, man. So, in my land.
By the way, that answer, why I love Nick Tangeman.
Yeah.
It's a great answer.
Many, many reasons.
Great answer.
We're counting them all. How I love thee. Let me count the ways. So, all right. In an outpatient clinic, it's a little, it's different and not. I mean, so Nick and I have worked in rehabs, and that's absolutely true. 99% of the people that show up there don't want to be there. And so we're usually dealing with people that are just, encountering life's consequences, and we're kind of helping them navigate that. In your question specifically, if your husband or boyfriend were to come in and say, look, I'm here because I did therapy once. That wasn't really going well for me. My significant other really gets a lot out of this, believes in this, and believes that I'd be benefited, if I were to do it. So I'm just here to dot the I's and cross the T's. I'm here because they want me to. I think the approach I'll have is I'll generally say, great. the first thing I'm going to do out of the gate is just agree with them. I'm not going to tell them, oh, that's a terrible perspective. Let me explain how good therapy is. I don't like your attitude. No. I just agree with them and I go, okay, great. Kind of like what Nick said. Well, it sounds like we're here anyway, right? Sounds like we're going to give this a go. I hope that it is a good experience. The first thing I'm asking, honestly, if I'm really picking this question apart, first thing I'm going to say is, hey, what didn't go well with your last therapist?
Mm-hmm.
What didn't you like? Why did it stop working for you? What were you getting out of it? What changed? What would have been better? If you could tell them anything, if you could just cast a wish and have a therapist that was just better than them, what would the next therapist do? Give me the playbook. How can I be the best possible therapist for you? Today's the day. I haven't started anything, so you don't have to correct anything. You could just tell me what you need, and I will try to match that. If they can give me anything, I'm using that. I'm writing all that down, and I'm going to actually make that my mission.
You know, the other thing I would probably ask then, too, after asking that question, I would ask, okay, so your significant other went into therapy. They found it beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
What did they say they got?
Yeah,
out of
what
it?
do they like
Right,
about
what
it?
do they like about
And then my next question then would be, so she's reporting that she got this out of therapy. As somebody in the relationship with her, have you noticed that in her?
Right.
Have you noticed changes in her?
Would you vouch for?
Yeah.
She feels like she's getting better.
Yeah.
Would you vouch for that as well?
And then both of those questions are to set up the third question, which is, do you wish you would have that? Or do you wish
Yeah.
you could have accomplished
I
that?
like
Or
that
do you,
approach.
because then it's kind of like getting to a point where you're kind of identifying it. So it's not that he doesn't like therapy, it's that the last one was ineffective.
Right.
So it's like, did you go to the last one with the hope
Right.
that you were going to get something? Because then that tells me something about internal motivation.
Right.
And it wasn't completely external.
Right. Or there
So-
was an obstacle that wasn't addressed.
Right. Yeah.
And so, Anonymous, I'm very interested in starting with that because I always start there. I mean, I always let the person know, look, you're not, this isn't a sentence. You're not being sent here by a judge. This is all optional. So let's start by trying to figure out how I can be better at this, and let's give that a go. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a lot of the session to try to normalize the experience of talking about your feelings, maybe not even having a really strong goal or direction in mind. I usually use the phrase emotional yoga as a way to kind of normalize this so people get this idea of like, hey, sometimes it's really healthy to just sit down and use emotion words to describe your life and to discuss that out loud. Sometimes that's really healthy. Sometimes you feel like you leave lighter than you came in, and maybe that's something we'll be trying to do in your life. That would be great if we accomplish that. So those are my first two steps. One, try to figure out how I could do better at this to get them encouraged. Two, try to normalize this process without them feeling like we have to have something to do. But I'm going to tell you this last part, and this is the thing I was joking earlier you probably won't like. I'm not going to make them do it. I mean, I'm going to make it clear to them, we're going to give this an honest try, okay? If you don't feel like this is good for you, or if you feel dread, you don't want to come talk to me, you find yourself trying to manufacture things to talk about to fill the hour, it's just awkward fumbling the whole time, but you're showing up because society or your spouse told you this is good, everybody should do it. It's like maintenance. It's like going your physical trainer or going to your dentist, like you're just supposed to do this now because it's 2023. That's not true. We do warn people that therapy can have harms too. And we do have a little bit of a responsibility to assess if this is even good for a person. And we have a responsibility that if they don't seem to be working on something or we don't perceive that this is best for them, to give them an out so that they don't feel compelled to do it. There are some therapists that will even say, I'm going to pause our treatment until something happens in your life. Now, I won't do that, but also my business model doesn't even touch insurances. For many people that are using insurances, that is a factor. And if the therapist assesses this person and says, hey, look, there's not a smoking gun, there's not something treatable right now, they may decline and they may say, hey, now's not the time, but I'm here for you when you're ready. So I'm prepared to give that person permission to step back. In my practice personally, what I would tell them is, we've done a great job getting to know each other. So I'm going to use that first session and get to know about their history. Usually I can get people chatty in the first session because they got to tell me about themselves. They got to tell me growing up and their relationships and what goes on and what do they do for a living and all the things. And so I'll get as much of that as I can. And I'll tell them, look, even if you don't want to come back next week, if you don't want to come back this month, that's fine because now you have a therapist.
Mhm.
We've met. You're in my books. I know you. I will remember you. And so if life happens, you've done it. You've already got a guy, and now you've got somebody for this. You have a specialist. I don't see my GI doctor all the time, but I know him. I know exactly where he is. I know his first and last name. And if I have a diverticulitis attack, I'm heading to Matt. And so the same thing could be true here, where it's like, hey, you know what? You got a problem? Go see Jim. We're good.
Matt's my
still-
golf coach.
Oh my God, he's a busy guy.
He is really busy.
He's very talented.
Do you still say all of that to them if they are paying cash for each session?
Yeah,
Like,
I
if
don't
they-
want them to feel like they have to
If they
come.
show up and they're like, I'd like to prepay for 10 sessions with cash,
Yeah,
you can be like, well, we'll do the first 10.
we'll
then."
just do 10.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's so funny because no. I mean, I'm sure that there's somebody out there that would have
I'm
different-
kidding. Of course.
I
That
know
would be,
you're
that would be
kidding.
unethical.
Of course it would be
of Jim
unethical.
Jobin to do that.
Thank you. But also people think about this, and it's a real question. I mean, it's rooted in a joke, but it's a real question that people will ask. And I'll tell you, I've got people that don't want to do it. And I'll tell them, there is no gun to your head. And I've had people even make jokes sometimes, like something about their discomfort with it, but they're sure I don't care because, I get paid either way. And I've corrected them. There's very few things that I get sensitive about in therapy, but that's one of them.
I
We're
find that hard to believe.
Well, I hide it pretty well. But I get sensitive about that because I'll tell them, hey, look, my calendar books up regardless if you're here or
Right.
not. And that's not a dig on you. It's permission. I don't need you to take care of my budget. The Jobin bills are getting paid. I need you to focus on what's best for you. And you have my permission to do this your way. And I care about you. I want to earn the right to give you feedback and tell you what I think would be best for you. But I run my practice on an as-needed basis. I want people to come when they want to. And so I've got folks that pop in every couple of months. And that's fine. I've been treating
Yeah.
them for years.
And I think from the writer's perspective, I think that is beneficial for both of you.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I say that is because if your significant other goes in and has that experience where, okay, I don't want to be here, but I have to do this to keep my spouse happy. So they do it, and then they go in for several sessions,
Right.
and they're not getting anything out of it. When they finally quit, and when life happens, and they actually do need to get back into
Now
therapy,
they don't have one.
now not only that, they don't want to.
Right.
Right.
Because the
It's lost its
experience
They
power.
believe it's useless.
Exactly.
Yep.
The experience they had taught them that they don't need it and it's useless.
Yep.
As opposed to with Jim's approach of, hey, let's talk a couple times. If you don't want to do this anymore, then we're just going to call it quits.
I'm on standby.
and
I'm
then,
not going anywhere.
And then I think the client
He's not. He
leaves,
very seldom vacations.
I never leave.
I think
hate it.
I think when the client leaves that, then they kind of have this sense of control. Like, okay. And then when they have that experience where it's like, oh, wow, I need to get in, then it's like, okay, well, I had a good experience. Because it's the same philosophy that I took when treating adolescents for substance abuse.
Right.
Because our goal when treating adolescents for substance use disorder was never complete abstinence.
No.
That's ideal. That's what we would want.
Right.
But our number one goal when treating kids was to have a good relationship with the kids.
So that when they needed
So
help.
when they needed it,
Yep.
they had a positive experience to look back on,
Yes.
and they're more likely to go back in the future.
Yep.
If they leave that experience and they're like, that fucking sucked,
I hate this.
screw all
Yeah.
counselors, I'm never doing this again,
Yep.
then when their addiction gets really bad and they know they need help,
Yep.
they're not going to go get it.
And that's the most dangerous thing
Yes.
that happen. That's how I was when I treated kids too. These days I really resist treating kids. But back when I did, it would frustrate parents because I'd tell the kid, just so you know, you do not have to be here. If you don't like this, or I'm not a good fit, or you just don't want to do therapy, you don't have to be here.
Mhm.
And the parent would sometimes be sitting in the room looking at me like, yeah, they do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I will make them do this. And I'll go, that's great. You can find another therapist then,
Mhm.
because I do not work with the unwilling. That doesn't work for Jim. You could find somebody else. There's somebody that will do it. But, that's because I'm thinking of the long game.
Mhm.
It's because I don't necessarily think that every single week is what everybody needs. The last thought I'll leave you with on this, Anonymous, remember that what works for you doesn't work for everybody. And while I'm so glad that you love, therapy in general, and it's been so nourishing for you, and I'm glad that you're out there proselytizing for it and encouraging people to do it, remember that too much of any medicine is toxic, and we don't know what the right dose is for your spouse. The right dose for your spouse could just be an every once in a while thing, or to create and that's not an unreasonable demand. You could say, look, I'd feel a lot better in life if you could go visit with a therapist once, just to have one that you've met. That way, if life ever gets you down, I know you've got a person you could revisit. And I'm sure your spouse would say, all right, yeah, that's not unreasonable. All right, I'll go knock out one session with somebody and just have their number in my phone. Great. Not an unreasonable thing. But I wouldn't necessarily push too much harder for more, because, too much of that medicine could be, hurtful to your spouse if that's not what's good for them. And that they're not lying, that they might be completely telling the truth. That doesn't mean that they're in denial. It doesn't mean they don't get it. It doesn't mean that they aren't doing it right. It just honestly could be that they don't benefit from this all the time. And so for them, it's an every once in a while or standby thing. But thank you for supporting the profession and for supporting this form of healthcare. I think it does add a lot to people's lives. And I agree with you. I'd like everybody to have the experience of either therapy or therapish, getting coached or getting that support from another person who's being very intentional with their lives. I think that's really, really important. But, we also have to respect that therapy isn't always going to be for everybody all the time, and that's not wrong. We want to make sure everybody's heard where they're at.
Yep.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Jim may lose his voice entirely, and then we might take a question on kinetic drawing tests. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
Today's episode is brought to you by Jake Schneider, Judy Schneider, Leon Kassab, Carolyn Alberts, Sammy Scoop, Sarah Smith, Mike Helm, Darren Cunningham, Matt and Lisa Tangeman, and Dr. Hot Dog Scoop. If you'd like to sponsor the show, become a therapy producer at patreon.com/therapy. Our second trivia question from the 1960s. What did the California Medical Association call medical menace in 1964?
It's probably marijuana.
Jim Jobin.
I was there.
A,
I was the Joker.
skateboarding. B, birth control.
Oh.
C, marijuana.
It's me. I want MJ.
D, watching television.
Yeah, I'm taking Mary Jane.
I mean, that's pretty good. What they call it? They call it medical menace?
Oh,
medical menace.
That had to be
they
like
called it
weed hysteria.
a medical menace.
Reefer madness.
I mean, that's not bad. I don't hate that guess.
Yeah. They go be TV. They love TV in the 60s.
Yeah, I don't think it's TV.
Baby
I'll say
birth
skateboarding.
control. All right.
It is skateboarding.
Hey! Wow. That's right.
Damn. Oh my gosh.
From half court.
With the lights. With the lights. Man, he
Nailed
sure
it.
bogeyed that one.
No, I did good at
no.
it.
All right.
Yeah, no.
I was an albatross.
Albatross. It's a good bird.
It's something Nick has never seen.
So the
No.
skateboards.
I don't think I've even seen that on TV.
What's an
I don't think I have
albatross?
either. That is two under
under.
par. No, sorry, 3 under par.
Yeah, 3.
Because you got par.
Yeah.
-1 is a birdie. -2 is an eagle. And -3 is an albatross.
I thought an eagle was a hole in one.
No, that's a hole in one.
Oh,
There's no fancy name for it. That is the fancy name.
wow.
Yep.
Wow, I really thought eagle meant hole in one.
No.
Nope.
You should do a whole golf trivia one. Because I'll tell you right now,
Don't threaten me with a good time.
yeah, I would not have gotten that. I would have been like, eagle means hole in one. And
I mean, he might still not get it.
I would have
if you
bet
put it
that.
on the
I
golf
would.
trivia.
I think
What's another
Which
name
is
for a
very
hole in
written.
one?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Which animal?
Yeah.
I would probably say that. All right. Nick, any chance you could read this last one? Because my voice is hanging on by a thread.
all right.
This is the great thing about Nick.
It just comes through. in
You
a pinch.
know, somebody fumbles and Nick is right there to
Right
pick it
there.
up.
Right there to pick it up and,
What was that guy, Nick
and
Boss?
drop it again.
Who was the guy that did the fumble recovery on the Chiefs? He stole it right out
Oh,
of Jalen
I
Hurts.
don't remember. I don't remember.
That was the last Super Bowl. Who remembers any of that?
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that. All right.
It's the pain is still
Hi,
fresh.
Pod Therapy dudes.
Hello.
This question comes from a curious mind. I was thinking back to when I started therapy a few months ago, and my therapist had me do this kinetic drawing test where I drew a house person, person of the opposite sex. Oh, there must be a comment there. A house person of the opposite sex, and a tree.
Punctuation is important when sending an email to someone who's going to read that email on the air.
Especially if that person is me.
Right.
All right. A person in the rain. I am somewhat familiar with this usage in children for measuring quantitative IQ levels, developmental milestones, and such. I am a young adult, 18. Oh, and you're a listener, 18.
No, you should not be listening.
And wondering why she would administer this test. I want to ask what she concluded about me. What are the results, in quotes, I did the first picture more detailed, the person. Then I got a little anxious about what she'd find in me in these drawings and proceed to draw something somewhat immature drawing that on a normal day I could do better. I know it's not about the quality of the drawing, but I feel like it might have gone the wrong I might have got the wrong assessment because I didn't want to be revealing. Goodness, I overthink. She did say from the first glance of it that I was withdrawn. True. Any thoughts on this would help.
They had drawn. Not withdraw, they had drawn. They had drawn a picture.
Hadron Collider.
That's right.
For reference, she's a therapist specializing in sexual trauma incest survivors. That can tell you a little bit about me as well. Thanks so much, Anonymous. She, her pronouns.
Okay. Yeah. Have you ever heard of the house drawing before?
Okay, so I've done... I used to do something like this a little bit. Goes back a long time ago, back when I was in Iowa. And honestly, I kind of did it just for fun as an activity in group.
Yeah.
But I also kind of used it to point out just kind of some bullshit.
Right.
You know, because like one of the things was there was this drawing where you drew a picture. And first of all, there were things that you had to include in the picture. Okay. And then what you did with the pictures, then you folded it into quadrants. So you folded it one way and then you fold it the other way. So on the picture, you had 4 squares, basically. And then it's like, okay, well, where did you draw the mountains? If you drew it up in the top left-hand corner, it means this.
Yeah.
Well, but then like my whole thought was, of course it's going to be up in one of the top 2 quadrants because you're not drawing mountains prospectively on the bottom.
Yeah.
Or you're not
so
going to
it's
see
like
the rest of the
spikes.
picture.
Yeah. It's like,
Otherwise, you
so
just
it's
like if you draw the mountain, center of the paper on the bottom of the paper.
Yeah.
Well, now you could just draw a mountain and be like, well, here are the things I drew behind that mountain.
Yeah,
but they're
yeah.
behind a mountain.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it's
I
don't
like to
know.
mess with a
It's-
therapist. Where's the mountains? Behind the house.
Yeah.
You can't see us with your imagination.
So I don't know. I
The
don't.
Rorschach Mountains.
Yeah.
I don't put a whole lot of stock into stuff like this, but it's not my specialty. You know, so like maybe if I learn more about it, that may change my. I'm open to it, but I don't.
You're probably more open to it than I am.
I think so.
Yeah. So the house idea,
Have you ever done this?
no, but I've had some really nice clinical staffings with some therapists that were very passionate about it. And I heard them out, and we were all interns together, and they explained the theory to me. And even then I thought, man, this is a lot of wishful thinking, but basically the idea is when you're working with a child, especially children of a certain age that aren't really communicative, art really is a way that they express themselves. And there is truth to that. They
Yes.
do express themselves in subconscious ways. And this is really adjacent to play therapy. Like you give a child a mommy and a daddy doll, and like you ask them to play house or whatever. And they're going to simulate with the dolls what they've witnessed, Now, the problem is they could also simulate with the dolls what they've witnessed on TV.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't tell you anything about their life. It's
Right.
just the way that they know TV works, right? And so this guy does that thing and then this, that, and the other thing. So it's harder and harder to dial into what play or what the house or art really reveals about the child. I do think that there's value to it. I still like being able to look at pictures and ask children what they drew and what this depicts. I'll ask them to draw their family, things like that. And then I'll use that as a way to get them talking. Because if I just say, tell me about daddy, they'll say, daddy's tall. And I say, great. Draw me a picture of your family. Okay, why is daddy standing over there far away from the family? Daddy doesn't live with us anymore. Okay, what's daddy's house like? Draw daddy's house, draw mommy's house. You know, daddy's house might have no decorations. Mommy's house has like a Christmas tree. And it's like, okay, I'm starting to get a vibe, you know,
No.
that could teach me things.
I think the utility of that
Yeah.
is the discussion that comes
Exactly.
from
Yeah.
the drawing.
'Cause
And
I'm
let's
not a
talk
believer-
about the drawing.
I'm not a believer in the subconscious representation of it.
Yeah.
And look, don't at me. You know, I know that there's some therapists listening to this. That's
Feel
like,
free
you
to
know,
at Jim.
Here it comes. You know, write me an email like, well, you don't understand how psychodynamics, blah, blah, blah. And that's fine. Look, I'm not trying to take a shit on the method. I'll tell you, I don't love handing an 18-year-old this assignment. I mean, the writer's
think
18.
I think at 18 you can have an open discussion
You
about
sure
it.
as hell can. I'm not giving the house to anybody over 3rd grade. I'm going to try to talk to
Let
them.
me ask
Yeah.
you this, because to kind of try to get to what the writer might be asking here, how much weight are you putting on this exercise?
Paperweight.
How much weight do you feel?
I'm
Let's say that
measuring it
it's
in
one of your colleagues
ounces.
that do believe, that sincerely believes in it.
Man,
How much weight are they putting into this?
I've had
Because the writer sounds concerned about what the therapist now
Yeah.
may or may not think of them.
I hope, writer, that your therapist just did this to open up a conversation or to try to unlock some guesses about you, and then they will talk to you more about that.
In which case, don't sweat it.
Yeah, I don't think you have to worry about it. No therapist should take the paper drawing of a house over what you subjectively tell them. Nobody should. Nobody should be like, "Oh, sorry, the paper says you're gay." You know, but you say you're straight. Like, you put your house on the left, you're clearly gay. You know, like, no, that's not how it works. Like, so
That is how
no-
that works.
Yeah, well, the gay thing, yeah.
yeah.
That's very
That
Freud.
specifically, though. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, the people that practice this with kids, they have a lot of theories about it. And they'll say, look, where you put the house in the quadrants tells us something. Is it too high? Is it too low? Is it open? Does it have a high sky above it? You know,
I mean, with
are
that
there
logic,
windows?
everything tells us something.
Right.
Yeah.
Are
what
there
the patient
windows?
wears into the
Are
session.
there
Yeah.
doors? Yeah. And like when they have them draw themselves, it'd be like, what kind of things they give themselves? Give themselves long hair. But
That
it's
is-
funny because if you would have asked me at 8 years old to draw a house, you're getting a box with a triangle on the top. And I'll tell you why. I don't like drawing.
Yeah.
And that was the end of this. I did what you
Yeah.
asked me to draw me a house. Here's a house.
Well, and that's one of the things too. Like I remember, you know, in school we kind of talked about this a little bit, and like the chimney represents warmth. So does the house have a chimney? But like I was thinking about that.
yeah, dude.
You know, like
I don't buy into this.
my house, none of the houses I lived in as a kid had chimneys. So why would I draw one?
Yeah.
You know, it's not. But again, like here's what I would do, writer. If this is something that's really concerning you, what I would probably do is in the next session, I would just, you know, well, I don't know how long ago you sent this, but in the next session, if it gets brought up, I would just be honest and just say, hey, look, you know, when I was drawing this, yeah, I just, it made me feel uncomfortable because I felt like I had to draw something that you, like, I was concerned
Yeah,
that you're
talk it
judging
out.
me.
I was
Yeah.
trying to achieve
Yeah,
something.
and so.
Which is also why I don't like it, especially
Yeah.
among those who are aware.
Yeah, because
Do
I
it when a
think
kid's
it's,
not thinking about you watching them do it.
yeah.
An adult is absolutely wondering what you're thinking, and
Yeah.
that influences the entire picture
Yeah.
and is irrelevant. Also, they might draw the last house they saw on Zillow. That
Right.
doesn't tell you dick about them.
Yeah.
Like, or oh, you shaded the corners here. Clearly, you had a home filled with laughter. It's just dumb. So I don't care for this technique.
I mean, I'm
It's getting late. Jim's
Jim's
I've
late.
lost my
It's
voice.
late and Jim's grumpy.
Jim's getting real honest.
But I mean, I'm pretty firmly in camp. Don't sweat this, writer.
Yeah, that's true. No, I wouldn't worry about it. This therapist would have to be a complete idiot to take a lot out of this and be like, oh,
Yeah,
this means a lot.
I think you're probably right. I mean, in the sense that my guess is the therapist was doing this as a way to kind of start a conversation.
Right.
That's what it
Most
needs to
likely,
be.
I don't think the
Yeah.
therapist is really putting a whole lot of stock into
Or
it.
it sounds
yeah.
because there was something in there that sounds like you might draw well
Yeah.
in your free time. You know, perhaps if you had mentioned that to the therapist, perhaps this was something that the therapist thought, oh, this person might be a little old for this, but if they like to draw anyway, perhaps they'll feel comfortable with this. I mean, who knows?
Yeah. The
But
question
I
I would
the
ask
bottom
you
line is I
later-
wouldn't worry too much about it.
I hope, writer, that in therapy, you're taking the opportunities to speak and to open up, because I'm curious as to why this therapist gave an 18-year-old this. I would wonder if there's enough discussion happening
Yeah.
because I could see something along those lines.
Oh,
you
I
know.
could see that. Like the therapist is like, okay, I got to try something
I
to
need
kind
to do
of.
something to open up communication.
Yeah.
And this activity is useful as long as the therapist uses it in that way. Because if the therapist is like trying to like interpret the picture, I think that's worthless. But I could see the therapist saying, so like technically the theory says that this kind of image represents this.
Mm-hmm.
Do you relate to that?
Mm-hmm.
Great. We've used the picture to get you talking about your
Yeah.
childhood.
Yeah.
What was your house like
Well-
growing up? What were holidays like at your house? Did you feel safe at your house? Like,
And-
great.
I can relate to that. I mean, because I've, briefly worked with kids,
Yeah.
and the youngest I ever worked with was like 8 years old.
Mm,
And like, I don't know if you've done much work with 8-year-olds.
it's tough.
Man, it's tough.
It's really tough.
And number one, you have to be doing something.
yes.
You can't
just
sit and talk with an
No.
8-year-old.
Mm.
You have to be actively doing something.
Yep,
You have to be playing a game.
yep.
There's got to be something happening.
Puzzle, yeah.
And I think that actually, I mean, even up to the ages like teenagers, like when
Yeah.
I was working with teenagers too, we could sit and talk, but if we got out, chess
Right.
and we're just playing chess or Connect Four or
Right.
anything like that, that doesn't require a whole lot of brain activity, but
Yeah.
we're doing something with our hands.
You're bonding.
You get a lot further.
Yeah,
you can
they
actually
talk
have-
more naturally
yeah.
in a triangular position with something else between you. The best therapy I ever did with kids wasn't therapy. It was whenever I was working at Eagle Quest, and I was doing
PSR.
Yeah, PSR, psychosocial rehabilitation. I take the kids out to play disc golf.
Mm-hmm.
Best bonding I ever was able to accomplish. Most honesty I could ever get out of a kid was just walking through the park, fetching our discs, talking about the game. Oh, good shot, man. Building them up a little bit, encouraging them, bonding with them, and then they'd start to open up about life in little teeny tiny doses.
Mhm.
You take what you can get. Anyway, we've now fully abandoned this letter. So 18-year-old, listen, my
I
friend.
don't know whose fault that was.
Jacob's right. You shouldn't sweat it. I don't think that your therapist is doing anything too crazy here. And I'm sorry for being rude. This is not. It's not a voodoo kind of ritual. It is a legitimate effort. Those who work with kids know way better than Nick or I that this method has a lot of merit in certain demographics. At 18, I think you're kind of stretching. I just want to make sure you guys are talking it out. And that's probably what their intention was, is just to use this to circle back around and create a way to talk to you about some stuff. And so as a therapist, on the side, I tell you, hey, make sure you're opening up. Make sure you're talking about your life. Because if it's hit a standstill, they might be using this to open up things a little bit more.
Yep.
Great question.
Keep it up, though.
Yeah, definitely
keep up the work.
going. Don't be discouraged.
Yeah.
And work on your art skills. Jesus. If we ask you to draw, don't half-ass it, okay? Get all the pieces in there. I'm talking brick house, okay? Shading, colors, all of it. Always sign at the bottom, just in case you become
Always
Yeah.
sign at the bottom.
Always sign at the
And
bottom.
You don't want that
pers-
therapist passing your art off as
I
theirs.
will. I'll get into the Art Institute with
And
your drawings.
perspective. No 2D stuff.
Yeah,
No.
full renaissance. Okay,
Yeah.
we need to be able to see
Would it kill you to do a little shading?
a little. I don't like too much shading, just especially, and also different mediums. If you're gonna get out the chalk, do the whole business.
Don't give me a pencil drawing.
As we wrap up the show, we want to remind you
Have some charcoal.
that
Yeah,
if you
come
sign up at patreon.com/therapy, you can get the extended show ad-free a day early,
The mere thought of it chokes Jim up.
as well as enjoy our live chat Discord community and our weekly deep dives, interviews, skill shares, and research roundups and rants.
What happened?
Dude, I don't know.
Send me everything that you have to say for the rest of the show.
It's
Text me
gone.
everything else you have to say
My
for the rest of this
throat
show.
is gone.
How? Like just now? It just happened?
Man, I don't know.
All right. And we want to
It's that
thank
moonshine he's drinking.
Ugh,
Aquafina.
gargling all this.
All right. And we've got a new Therapal. Welcome to the party,
Woo!
Shelly Hangenau
Yeah, it feels right.
or Hangenau. I think it's Hangenau.
Jones.
Although people always say my name is Oh, it is Tangeman,
Mm.
not Tangeman. So Hangenau, I'm going to say. Shut up.
You showed your math.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's why I think you're a great therapist.
Aww. And thank you to our third partner, Dirty B.
Dirty B.
And we especially want to thank our bosses, the Saccharine 16, the mysterious and shrouded Illuminati members of our fan club, the Thayer producers. Thank you, Jake Schneider, Robert Brownie Jr. Mint, Smitty Scoop, Ben Don, Judy Schneider, Kayla Lansbury, Dr. and Mr. Hot Dog Scoop, Malia, Leon Kassab, Cindy Ash, Mason Miller, Richard Macy, Carolyn Albert, Kevin Chamberlain, Tess Miller, Newstick, Sammy Scoop, Ben Stanley Slap in Your Face, Polygon, Sarah Smith, Adam Hathaway, Byler T, University Jeff, Mike Helm, Myra, Paris, Samantha Cohn, Darren Cunningham, Lib, Team Monaco, Thunder Cougar, Falcon Scoop, Matt and Lisa Tangeman, Hey Yo, Oscar Swanros, and a Sunny Boy.
If you'd like to hear this episode uncut and unedited,
And why wouldn't you?
Thank you. Sorry, I forgot that you do that. And enjoy our spontaneous side projects, please go to patreon.com/therapy. And thank you for supporting mental health.
That was pretty good, Jim. Give it to us one more time.
No, back to one. That's you, Dick. I can't do it.
That's all the time we've got for this week's session. We want to thank our landlords, the Ice Cream Social Podcast, and thank you to all those who contributed to the show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Share the episode with a friend, at least 2 friends. Share it with 2 friends.
Maybe 3.
Yeah,
3's too many.
Yeah, no, 3's fine. And then share the link in the episode's description and in our podcast app by copying and pasting the link provided. And don't forget, you can follow us at Facebook at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter at PodTherapyGuys, Instagram at PodTherapyGuys.
It is? Yeah.
And
at PodTherapyGuys all over the place.
patreon.com/therapy.
Doing great.
If you want to submit a question to the show, ask anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm Nick Tangeman.
Jim Jobin.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.
Jim, do you have any other theories or processes that you really like that you'd like to explain to everyone right now?
Ah, man. Let me tell you about those UFOs. Okay. Shit's real, man. They're just finally starting to shoot them down.
Yeah, they are.